Well, you would know all through the month of Ramadan, we've had this feature called Fired Up here on the Ashraf Garda show. And the person who's always fired up is not the Ashraf Garda, but the Ashraf Gangrekar. And today, Ashraf Gangrekar is fired up around the issue of tolerance. So, good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Ashraf, good chatting to you.
Likewise, excuse me, frog in the throat. Likewise, Ashraf, walaikum salam. Good to be with you again.
Thank you. Right, you want to touch on tolerance, and I'm going to tolerate your coughing and your sneezing as well, because that's the reality of pain, flu, whatever, right? But let's talk about the serious issue of tolerance. What do you want to touch on?
Thank you, Ashraf. Thanks for your tolerance. You know, Ashraf, obviously it's Easter Monday. Really, sorry. And I thought to myself, you know, it's almost a coming together of all faiths, and it's the Passover for the Jewish faith. It's obviously Easter weekend for the Christian faith. We in the middle of Ramadan. I think it's the new year for the Tamil community as well. And so I don't want to simply narrow this down to religious tolerance per se, but I'm going to argue and submit today that tolerance is in fact a virtue. And tolerance is not simply, in my opinion, putting up with people, oh, I'm going to tolerate you, but it's entering into every interaction with an open mind and an open heart. And when we do that, you are able to navigate the hiccups of life in your personal relationships with respect and dignity. Because if we were not tolerant, then quite honestly, our personal relationships, which often are a result of, I am going to argue, social conditioning, they will become impaired. So that simply, if we, you know, just easy examples for us as Muslims, Ashraf, the issue of shaking hands. In many communities, that's seen as a complete and utter norm. So that when, for example, a non-Muslim person reaches out his hand to, say, a Muslim female who is reluctant to shake hands, if that person wasn't tolerant, then or aware of a social norm or an Islamic norm, that may breed a sense of animosity or create a new social conditioning. So this concept of tolerance, I'm going to take this Easter weekend, as I said, when the faiths of the world, or the leading faiths of the world, gather on one weekend. I'm not speaking about religious tolerance, but tolerance in our lives. So I want to ask, and I ask myself first, and you, Ashraf, and all our listeners, as to just how tolerant are we? So when someone, either from a cultural background, a social background, is different to what we perceive to be our norm, how easily are we accepting of that? Because it doesn't necessarily mean that we are better, but for peaceful cohabitation, interaction within your own family first, your work colleagues, and then broader community, etc. I reckon tolerance is crucial, because in the absence of tolerance, I think there is serious conflict.
But linked to that, so you're right. The one is the macro religious tolerance, which is, you know, you're Muslim, you're Jewish, you're Hindu, you're Rastafari, whatever, and tolerate the fact that other people have a different faith. I mean, that I think we get that. But on a day-to-day level, I think people struggle. And do you think it's because in fact we have we lack an understanding into the cultural norms of that person and that society, because that's the central part of it. We just don't know enough. You gave the example about the handshake. For some people, it's normal. For others, it's not. In many of the Black African societies, a child will not look in you in the eye out of respect. In another community, that's downright rude. So what it says is there has to be a greater focus on what I've called cultural intelligence, that we need to understand how different cultures think and work, and then we'll be able to tolerate them a lot better.
Ashraf, you've hit the nail on there. And I think that's particularly because the first key I'm going to submit to tolerance is precisely that, and I'm going to call it curiosity. That you need to be curious as to why other people do things differently, as it were. And therefore I said, if you were to enter any interaction with an open mind and open heart, then you are able to learn. And once you learn, you're able to understand. Because I wasn't going down the route of the sort of, as you said, macro sense of tolerance in terms of religions. For me, in this series of little chats that we've been having, I've been trying to inculcate in myself and to the listeners, Ashraf, the sense of habit forming. So that when post-Ramadan for us as Muslims, that these type of actions become part of who we are. So that, to pick up your excellent point, a lot of what we perceive then is simply due, let me say, not ignorance, but the lack of knowledge of another person's culture, even viewpoints. And I just think if we remain open to that which sometimes we don't even agree with, and that's okay, you don't need to agree with everything. Tolerance is not agreeing, tolerance is understanding, and then peacefully, not necessarily even accepting. You don't have to accept, but you need to show an element, huge element of respect. And those two things for me are linked.
Well, I certainly have got that, and I think you're right. It's habit forming. So one is on a religious level, the other is cultural level, the other is even within our own homes in terms of our, even if we agree to disagree on certain things, we need to tolerate that different viewpoint. And but the essence of what you're saying is this must be habit forming. So yeah, you certainly got me thinking about that. Ashraf, good chatting to you as always, and I'm sure we'll chat tomorrow. Thank
Look
you.
forward to it, Ashraf. Thank you so much. Take care. Wassalamualaikum
Thank you.
salam.
Welcome, Salam. There we are, Ashraf Gangrekar being fired up, talking about the issues of tolerance. Have you got that? I mean, how fired up are you around, advancing the adopting of tolerance in your day-to-day dealings with all sorts of people? I think you should. More to come after this.